See, so we are doing four of these sessions. Today's the first one. We're going to look at grants program today, and then next week is going to be donor retention. The week after will be mid-level donors, and then after that we'll be looking at planned giving. And I just realized I need to keep an eye on the waiting room here, so I let everybody in. So my guest today is John Gaddis from J. Gaddis Consulting. These are going to be recorded, so if you have registered for today, you can come to any of the sessions. You'll also get a copy of the recording. I'll send this out to everybody tomorrow when it's available, and then at the end of the 4 weeks, I'll send email to everybody who registered for any programs with all four of the programs that we did, as well as any links from our our presenters. Okay, so John, I asked John to join me for this one because he is a grants expert and also a systems guy and a CRM guy like myself. So I knew he'd be a good person for this topic. My work is all about systems and strategies. John is the founder of J. Gaddis Consulting, and his work is focused on helping small arts and culture organizations build sustainable fundraising infrastructure, including systems for grants, donor management, and stewardship. So, when you think about having a grants program, in my opinion, it's about a strategy and a system. If you have the two together, then you've got a successful program. What we're going to work on today is showing you how to build a system in Little Green Light that is going to support your grants program and allow you to spend less time on busy work and admin and more time on the strategy side of things and the actual grant writing and going after funding. So ideally, when we do all of this, we're going to be spending less time searching for information, stay on top of deadlines, streamline preparation and reporting, build institutional memory, and improve revenue clarity. So, John, what's the key to well, first off, introduce yourself. Let us know about J. Gaddis Consulting, and then I've got a question for you.
Sure. So, hello everyone. My name is John Gaddis, as Mike said, and yeah, Jay Gaddis Consulting. We primarily work with arts and culture nonprofits. I myself am a classical musician by training. I spent many years as a freelance performer before I got into the world of grant writing and fundraising. And yeah, so I think the number of thoughts. I think the high level answer to your question is just kind of organization. Was there something else you were going to add, Mike?
Yeah, what's the key to a successful grants program, right? What does it take?
Yeah, I think for me, I work with a lot of smaller organizations where they maybe don't have a fundraising staff, or it's an executive director who wears every possible hat, and they're also the grant writer. And I find that oftentimes people can be intimidated by grant writing, and it's more the writing that people are worried about. And what I find is the area where you can see the most benefit by investing some attention and energy is just organizing. So I know many folks on this call are not just starting out. If you are someone who's starting a grant program, that could be things that are just having a boilerplate mission, program description, kind of supplemental materials that you are keeping on a letterhead, like a consistent letterhead with board lists, works examples, media, press clippings, things like that, and a standard budget template. Something I found that you really start to notice after year two, three, and four is when you're starting out, if it's a new application or certainly if it's a new grant program, you're kind of reinventing the wheel each time. But then after it's the second or third time you've applied to the same opportunity, you start to realize like, wait a second, I've done this before. This is I should not have to be putting in this much work for the same application. So I like to think of it more as you kind of create your own internal grant, like your platonic ideal grant that you revisit, at least once a year, maybe more often, that does have this standard description of your program and mission. This way, when you're going to different applications, different funders, everyone's basically asking the same questions, but everyone asks them in slightly different ways. So the danger is if you're only ever responding to these different applications, these different funders, You're sort of always changing a little bit how you describe yourself. You're sort of triangulating one grant application against the previous one. But if you have a strong internal sense of how you're presenting yourself, what your supplemental materials looks like, then you're just translating it into each funder's preferred format. So simple things like really consistent file names. When I'm creating a program budget, I know it's 2026, I know what this is. But me in 2 years, if I open this document, I don't want to have to spend 20 minutes figuring out, wait, what the heck is this thing? Why is this? What was this for again? So just simple things like always putting the year, the name of the funder, leaving yourself a trail of breadcrumbs, so to speak, so that you in the future, or if you that gets to delegate this to someone in the future, or if someone comes along, if you've left your position, um, they can see sort of the context of this funder and the way you've been presenting yourself in the past. And I just find that sort of uh, organizational discipline just pays such dividends over the years. And in general, I don't love CRMs for their grants management. A lot of them, um, you kind of have to wrangle things in a little bit of a weird way to get them to fit. Little Green Light is one of the exceptions, especially for CRMs that are designed for smaller nonprofits. I think it's really, really a robust tool for managing your entire grant program inside of, if you want to, you can kind of do everything in the program. And I think that's probably a good place to hand it back to you, Mike.
Yeah, absolutely. That's one of the things I love about Little Green Light. I used it as an executive director for a few years, and like I'm sure it's like almost any user, there's a big learning curve with Little Green Light. But once I kind of figured out, oh my gosh, I can do almost anything in here, I really fell in love with this program. I dropped in there. I see people are introducing themselves in the chat. Please, yeah, let us know who you are and who you work for, or the organization you're with if you're a board member. And if you have questions at any point, go ahead and drop them in the chat. John and I will both be keeping an eye on that. We should have plenty of time. We will have plenty of time for questions at the end, but you can feel free to drop them in there as we go. But taking from that, the key tools that we're going to look at today that are going to help with your grant program in Little Green Light are documents, goals, tasks, contact reports, and searches and reports. So those are some of the pieces we're going to be using in there. You can do a whole lot in Little Green Light without using all of these tools, and without using any of them really. I mean, these are some of the tools that you can have been working with Little Green Light for a couple of years and really not even have used these. So that's part of why we put this series together, is to show people you have a lot of tools here. I was once suckered into this idea that I had to move from Little Green Light to a bigger program that had more bells and whistles, and it was a big mistake. And we moved back as quickly as we could. And I realized all of the things that I wanted this bigger software to do were already in there. It was just a matter of finding them. So having said all of that, let's build a grants program in Little Green Light. So I'm going to switch over to, if hopefully everybody can follow on my screen, this should be seamless. I'm switching over to my demo account. As a disclaimer, Slayton Charities is not real. It has no money. You will not get any money if you try to apply to the Slayton Charitable Trust Fund, or any of those.
No
So
unsolicited proposals.
what's that?
No unsolicited proposals.
Exactly. Yes, we are not. Yes, our funding priorities are obscure and limited. So, John, one of the things you talked about was developing boilerplate, right? It's kind of like getting your junk drawer organized, right? All those pieces that you need when you're going for a grant. And as you said, the first couple of years you're doing this, the first couple of grants, you're pulling things at the last second and be like, oh my gosh, do we have a conflict of interest policy? They need us to send that in, and all of a sudden you have to create one, and then after a few years, those things have settled down. You've got that toolbox, right? So
Yeah, I was going to say, ideally, after a few years of your grant program, if you're still finding when the grant's due at midnight and you think everything's ready, and then you realize, oh, when's the last time this board list was updated, or where is the conflict of interest form? I know we have one. We just the board just saw it 2 meetings ago. So if you're finding that you know this exists, and it's just a problem of this lives in 3 different inboxes, and maybe a Google Drive, consolidating in one place is super, super helpful.
Yeah, and so that's one of the first things we're going to look at, and this is sort of your base layer. If you've ever talked with me about nonprofit work in any capacity, I've probably talked to you about my idea of layers and layer theory, and an organization just sort of builds and moves from one layer to another. So we're going to start with that foundational layer, and this is sort of the simplest thing you can do. But it's I think could be very helpful for a lot of nonprofits is to use the documents feature in Little Green Light to organize your core documents, to put together your development toolkit. So if you've never used this, and I was one of these people, I had not used this feature for years of using Little Green Light. It is under activity. We've got our contact reports and tasks and volunteering and notes, and then we have documents. And so when I go here, I get all the documents we've ever uploaded to our Little Green Light account. One of the interesting things about documents is that you can attach them, of course, to a record, but you don't have to. It's really the only record you can create in Little Green Light that doesn't have to be connected to a constituent record or a gift record. And so some of these are not. What I've done is I have given these a type, and I've created a type called toolbox. And so when I check that, it brings up my toolbox documents. And so I've got here a budget template that John sent me. I've got our boilerplate language, conflict of interest policy, case for support, mission, vision, values, all those documents that I need when I'm going to put together a grant or that I need to share when I'm going to share them with a grant writer. What I've done also now, because I want to make this even simpler, right? I created a saved search for my development toolbox. And then I've actually taken that URL and I've saved it up here as a bookmark. So this is a little tip in Little Green Light is whenever you're on a gift page or a search page or something, those URLs are static. And so they're not going to change. And you can bookmark it so that instead of having to navigate through the system, I can just go right up here and click Development Toolbox. And it's always going to take me straight to these 5 documents. So no matter where I am, I can pull those up and pull them out. In the Documents feature, we've got the ability to add PDFs, and we've got the ability to add a web document. So I want to show this budget template, and we won't get too deep into this, John, because I think we could spend the whole hour on this. But let me pull that up. And I just put this into a Google Drive so that we can see it. Do you want to talk a little bit about the budget template?
Sure. So this is just one that I use. Again, this is maybe a little bit more geared for arts and culture orgs, but I find that often this is the biggest thing where after a couple of years, if you look back and you see, oh, we have every single application is sort of a different budget. We don't have a consistent through line. So if I feel like the biggest advice I would have for organizations trying to create or streamline their grant program is to decide on a 2 templates, I guess. This is one is kind of a general operating fiscal year, and then a program budget that you use this template for everything everywhere. And then when you are applying for a grant, you are translating those numbers into their format. Oftentimes they just let you upload your budget as is. Sometimes they have these kind of frustrating predefined line items that you have to match your information to. But I find, especially with government grants, if you've only ever sort of saved it in their preferred format, the mental math of going back and translating it to what your numbers, how you look at them, how your development team and your finance team looks at them, it just saves so much 11th hour angst, I would say.
This is shocking breaking news that sometimes grant makers have frustrating applications processes. That's just, maybe we can change that. Maybe we should let them know. Okay, so we have that document in there. We've also got some PDFs, and I think if I open this up, it should open up in my browser here. Okay, so this is my fake mission, vision, and values for my fake charity, and so I've got this available for me right here. What's nice also in here is that, let me go back to I'll use my bookmark here. I can make this public. And so when I make it public, I have a link that I can share with somebody. Now, that's helpful if you're sending out an email and you want to send an attachment, or if you just need to share this with a grant writer or somebody, you can do that. The other type of document is what's called a web document in Little Green Light. And so I did one with the boilerplate language like we talked about. And so this has just got, our basic information about our fictional charity. And then we can edit this. And this could be a living document. So we can say, maybe we updated our mission. We also grow flowers. We decided to make a change to our mission. And now we've saved that. And you'll notice that it creates a new version. So if somebody, the new executive director comes in and says, we're getting rid of flowers, it's very easy to go back to the version history. So this is a very handy tool. It's also something that we can use to actually help with the grant writing. So I want to go to, we're applying for the Lost Puppies Foundation. And I've actually created a document in here for the grant application. And so what I did was I copied and pasted the questions that might have been on their website that we need to answer. And then John and I and any of the other users in here can go in and edit this and add information, and we can make comments just the same as you could do in Google Docs or OneDrive or something. But if you don't have one of those, you can use this in Little Green Light. Or if you just want to keep everything in one place, which I think there's a lot of help, there's a lot of benefit to not having to be in a separate software for everything. So the documents feature is a simple way to improve what you can do in there. Got a question about the template. Are we using QuickBooks Online as well, or just this template in this example? I think you could use QuickBooks Online to pull your profit and loss or your statement of financial activity as well. But depending on what the grant needs, they might need your budget, they might need your actuals. So you may need to pull that from QuickBooks. But we can also come back to that in the question and answer. So John, we've gone over our foundational layer, right? We've got our documents organized. Now, what do we do to actually, what are we doing when we're running a program? How are we going to go get some grants?
I think the next step is sort of like the grant calendar. So that's the prospecting, going and finding opportunities, whether that is you yourself going out there, kind of doing Oppo research, as I think of it, when you look at similar nonprofits in your field, seeing who's funding them, going on, something like Candid Foundation Directory, looking for grants. If your board members may send you a random funder they came across. So it's identifying who are we going to consider applying. Who are we going to look at and see, are we eligible? Is this a good fit? Do we want to apply? And once you can start building out that list of potential funders, then we can kind of talk about more the different life cycle of a grant and the stages, how you would track that in Little Green Light,
Yeah.
particularly.
Well, let's go back. Let's go to the Lost Puppies Foundation because they do some great work, and we're gonna look for them. Now, I want to ask you if we're doing our research and we find maybe we look at 10 organizations and we decide that we're going to go after five of them, but five of them are not a good fit for some reason. Which ones should go into the database? Should I put all 10 in? Should I only put the five that we're applying for? Is there an over under rule on that?
I mean, it's a bit of a judgment call. I personally err on the side of put everything in, because again, think about you in 3 years. It's just going to save you a little bit of time. If you come across something, you can go in there and say, "Oh, we already looked them up. We're not a good fit. They only fund people in Rhode Island." You can just save yourself a little bit of time. And there are also going to be cases where you see somewhere that you're almost aligned with the funder and you're just not at that budget size yet, or you want to create a program that they're interested in funding, but you're a couple of years out. So it's also good to put those in there that kind of keep an eye on it in the future, like not now, maybe not in the next year or two, but keep them on your radar. So I think having everything in there again with just clear notes, just some simple short context, will really serve you well over the years.
Yeah, and of course that's where you can use groups, or you can use lists or constituent categories to organize that in Little Green Light. We've got the Lost Puppies Foundation. We decided this is one we want to go after. And so I'm going to scroll down here to this related activity feed, of course, because we've put our organization in here, so we know all of our history is here. Um, I've got the grant application that we were working on. They got the comment that I made where I need John to work on something. This can be helpful too if you want to keep all your login information in one place. I've created a note here, where we can keep the URL for the portal and the login name, and you may or may not want to put your password in there, but you could at least put, here's who the person who has this login information, because that's one of those things where depending on who originally signed up for the account with the portal, that can be kind of a mess. Um, One thing before we get into, I want to get into goals here in a second, but I just want to look real quick at the there's another organization we put in here. It's the French Horn Foundation. They're out giving people French horns. Um, and we
Great
put
work.
them in here and we used the relationships feature here. So who are some of the people we might want to include in addition to the organization in our database?
So you mean of the kind of
Like
employees
the
of the?
the roles. Yeah, yeah.
So I think you can think of it in a few different ways. There's the person that's going to actually help the grant get paid. If again thinking of a larger funder, there's going to be a dedicated administrator, grants administrator. They're going to be your contact for setting up payments. You definitely want to know who they are, what their phone number and their email address is. There's also probably going to be a program officer. They may be in charge of the particular funding area. You are in health services. That's their program area at that foundation. And then also, I think it's always good to have any senior leadership, their executive director, president, any board members that might be in your orbit. I kind of think of it in a few different layers. There's the finance layer, who can help me get this grant paid, the compliance layer of who am I sending reports to, who am I if we have some major change, I need to reach out and discuss the terms of our grant agreement. Who is that person? Who's our kind of officer, compliance officer? And then who would come to our gala? Who would we want to invite to a big, exciting thing that we're doing or our annual benefit? Who are those people? So kind of having all those relationships in Little Green Light and labeled is helpful because oftentimes a limitation is if you just have one primary contact, sometimes that's going to be the executive director. You're not reaching out to that person, to help get a wire transfer issue sorted out. But if you're able to add everyone in and kind of notate who's who at that organization, it's really helpful.
Yeah, absolutely. And one of the things too, so we've got Clark Kent in here as the executive director. Now, we don't want to be emailing him about everything that ever comes up. So we can go in and we can change his contact type to be we could create a special one. We can use that contact type to make sure that he's not coming up as a primary person. The primary contact is the French Horn Foundation, and these employees are others or secondary, so that when we pull a mailing list, when we pull an email list, we can filter for that, and then we're not spamming every employee at every funder we've ever reached out to. Um, so let's go ahead, let's move into goals and see how this can help us. So under fundraising, we've got the option here to add a goal. And I'm just going to create we're going to create one really easily here. We're going to add a goal and we'll call this, 2026 General Operating Grant. And we're going to put our constituent. We've already got them in here. It's the Sample Foundation. And so we're going to put in what we're asking for. Let's say we're asking for $5,000. Little Green Light allows us to put a projection if we think we might get funded at less than that. And you can pull that projection in reports, so it can be helpful for financial forecasting. When we're in goals, we have two options: major gift or grant proposal. Of course, we're going to be a grant proposal. I can assign an owner. So this is the person. Ashton is our mythical grant writer, so we're going to put this in his portfolio. And then we have the status. So what are some of the statuses we might want to track here, John?
So I think the thinking of building out our calendar, our prospect list, just I see it here as prospect is the very first one of we are wanting to know more. Are we eligible? Are they accepting are there any open opportunities? So that's kind of the first stage.
Yeah. And
Um,
so to build out that calendar, then what we can do is we can create a task that's going to have a date associated with it. So if this is something where we just still need to research this or we need to send an LOI? What do you think our next step is?
so I guess the first step would just be, determining eligibility, or funding alignment. That would probably be before even the LOI stage. Um, I'd say once you've got that in, then you kind of move on to either they're not a fit right now. You've you've done your due diligence with this potential funder, or you are eligible, and now we've got either if there's an LOI, you've got to submit the LOI, or if it's just a full application is the first step, then you move on
Yeah.
to that, and that has its own associated task,
So we can we
so to
can put
speak.
we can put all these in here as different dates. We can add multiple tasks. We can add files. We can give them a type. We can create the types that we need in here. And then what's great is we can then pull those dates back out in a report. So we can, and we'll get to this at the end, where you can really see a nice report that shows you all of your upcoming dates, which is really going to help you with that grant calendar and start to get a handle on the deadlines and reporting dates and things like that. Um, I want to jump into uh, our actual goal here. So I've I'm on the goals page and it automatically just shows me the goals for this fiscal year. Now I've done some saved searches. I can change this to look for, of course, all goals because I have some from last year. So this gives me seven. And then I might want to look for ones that are just open. But I've got a saved search here for the ones that are assigned to Ashton. And so that narrows this to three. And again, I've saved this as a URL here. So I've got that ready to go. And so we've got a grant open for the French Horn Foundation. And let's go in here. So what we've got is we can see that we've asked for $50,000. We think we might get 25 to 50,000. And we've got some activity here. We can see that we gave a tour of the facility to the program officer on February 10th, and we can see that we've got the LOI is due on March 13th. So we can start to organize these things in here. We can also track the time, which is helpful if you want to really capture how much time you're spending on grants, which may be important if you have a board member or a supervisor who is really pushing for going after every single grant. If you can show them that, this is taking 10 hours of staff time to get each of these done, then you can start to weigh some of the cost benefits of going after all of those. I also want to look, because we're in the French Horn Foundation, we actually have two goals for them. And so this is one of the nice things about goals is I can keep all this separate, right? If I go to their record, I can see everything. But if I go back to our new instruments grant, I can see we got a lot more information here. I've got my application. We sent a thank you letter to the board. That's done. We have a grant report that's still due. We've got a gift of $1,500, and we have a pledge for the remaining 3,500. And I have a contact report where we were going to send this thank you letter, and we had the students send handwritten cards. So we've put all that in there. So the goals feature allows us to really capture a great amount of information about the grant with lots of different types in there. What do you think is the most helpful sort of thing, John, when we're applying for or we've gotten the grant and we're trying to follow up with it? What are some of the things that are easy to lose track of?
I think what communication has happened previously, kind of things that maybe don't have a paper trail. So if your executive director has a phone call with someone from the organization, or an email that maybe was between someone that's not, the grant writer, those things are kind of easy to get lost in the sauce if you don't know about it, and it's easy to forget about it if it's not logged and tracked somewhere. So I think that's a one big thing. And I think another, with a funder that you have a long-standing relationship with, it's a really bad look if you forget a grant. If you don't know about previous award that they'd given you, or just not really being able to. It's kind of a terrifying thing for a new staff person or a new executive director to walk in and know, wow, they've been funding us for 10 years, but I don't really know the details. I don't know, is this general operating? What was this for? I see this, I see various things here and there, but if you can create kind of a coherent through line of the relationship, that's just tremendously valuable for anyone, but particularly for someone who's walking in, who's new to your organization.
Yeah, and we can, of course, include the actual grant documents in here, right? We can include the proposal and the contracts. All of that history can be in one place. So if you're that new executive director, you're that new development director coming in, you can have access to everything. Which I think, we talked at the very beginning about getting the documents organized. This is just getting this information organized so that you can hand it off to somebody when you're moving on, or you can delegate it, right? If you're the one person shop and you're handling everything, the more you can systematize something like this, the more easily you'll be able to delegate it to a volunteer or a contractor or a board member or something like that. So, um, these are all steps that are really going to help bring a little order to that chaos, right? I want to show in here just how easy this is. Let's say we're on this French Horn Foundation, and we've got let's say we have a contact report. We're going to add this, and what we did was we had a call, and we can just add whatever we want. ED called to ask how the money was being spent. I don't know. We can just log that in here. And what's nice too is because we created these relationships, we can associate it with that person. So we can save this record now, and we're creating a contact report that is going to be showing up on this record as well as on Clark Kent's record. Although it's not showing up, so I don't know why that is right now. Did I put the wrong date on here?
Or a little bit of a
There might be a lag, or
lag time.
I might not have saved it correctly. Let's go to Clark and see. I've got the contact report here, so I bet. Oh, you know why? I'll tell you exactly why it was. That contact report is in here, but I didn't attach it to the goal. I was still in the goal, so it is possible to get a little bit confused between what's in the goal, what's on there, and certainly to find this information in there. If you know what you're looking for, it's going to be helpful. But I think it would be much more helpful if we could pull a report that was going to show us this information in a really succinct way. But before we jump into that, what are some of the challenges with like a multi-year grant?
Most it's aside from just keeping everything on track, reporting requirements and all that. It's the financial reporting. So how you are, it's sort of, again, I'm thinking in layers here of you've got the year that the award was received, like when the cash is in hand, versus when it was committed, when you had a receivable. And then the final one would be what year is this being allocated to? So being able to report out each of those cleanly, the finance is going to care about different things than maybe development or leadership does. So being able to keep those, knowing which of those is which, and being able to report out on those is really useful.
And so in this situation, we have an award here from the Slayton Family Charitable Trust, and they're giving us $500,000 over 3 years. Um, and the status is awarded, right? We haven't closed this out, even though we're getting the money. We're still considering this an open goal, and the goal feature can help us manage the gift even after the grant, after it's been received and given. And what we've done here is, of course, we have our proposal, and we've created 3 pledges, right? So associated with this goal, we have a pledge of $250,000 for January 1st of 2025. We have a pledge of 125,000 for January 1st of this year and 125 for next year. And we can assign them whatever fund or campaign we want. I labeled all of these with the 2025 grants campaign, assuming we might want to know that even though we're getting the money in 27, it was part of our 25 grants. You might want to change that however you want it. And then we can put the gifts in and match them to these individual pledges. So we've received $35,000, and that shows that this balance has been taken down. So as this grant continues, or as we have multiple grants maybe from this founder and or this foundation, and we're getting pledges in different years and we're getting payments, we can actually keep track of things much more easily. So if we get a payment for the 2025 grant year at the beginning of 2026, we can very easily associate it with the previous pledge and not get into that real mess of knowing like, well, okay, wait a minute, are we being reimbursed? Are we being paid in advance? And so the reporting feature is one of the things that helps us make sense of all this. And what we do, and I'm not going to go into reporting in detail today or right now because it can get kind of complicated to build. But once you've built them, I have a couple sample reports, and these live in the reports section, right? I've built a grants receivable report, an active grants with scheduled payments. I can export these whenever I want. I exported some, and I have loaded them into Google Docs, Google Sheets for us to be able to see. And so, like John was talking about, I have four different audiences in mind, right? Maybe our executive director just wants to see our active goals, a summary of what's active. And so this tells us what our goals are, who we're going after, what we're asking, who is the owner, which of our staff people or board members are assigned, and then the status and any notes that we've got in there, right? So just very high level. Executive director can look at this anytime. We can pull it for them. They just want to know where are we on all of our grants. We've got that. We don't have to do a lot of fiddling. The second report is for our manager, and this is all of our active goals and any to-do lists or any tasks or contact reports. So it's the same information largely, but a little bit different because we don't have the money in here. I took that out just to keep the report clean, but we do have our activity. So I can see, okay, we had the tour of the facility with the program officer, and that happened on February 10th. I can see that the LOI is due. Looks like it might be overdue. It was due on the 17th. I can see that with this grant, I need to send a thank you letter to the board. We've got a final report due. We need to send in receipts. Whatever notes are put in there, I can pull this out from like an operational standpoint and see what work is coming up. And this is highly customizable. We can filter the tasks just by type. If we put a grant report type, we can do that. If we have phone calls, we can do that. And then we've also got our finance report. This one shows of our goals, our new instrument and our multi-year operating grant, what's been awarded, what's been pledged, received, what's due, and here's the different list of pledges. So our finance department's going to love this. It's going to make their life easier. And then our last sample report is for multi-year payments. So I built this one just for the 3-year grant from the charitable trust. And I built it so we get the 2025, the pledge and balance for each year. So we can see what was pledged and what's been paid, or what's due, what's the balance due. We're still owed $215,000 from last year. We are owed 125. None of it's been paid for this year and for next year. So a report like this takes a little while to build with each column, but it makes it so much easier when you're on one of these multi-year grants. You're like, wait a minute, where are we on that? Have we got the 40,000? Are we still waiting on that? So these reports I always think of this as being kind of the flip side of the coin, right? We get the data into Little Green Light, and then the reports are what makes it really usable for us. Anything you want to add to that, John, on the reporting side?
Yeah. So as you said, some of these can take a little time to set up. That last one in particular, depending in certain CRMs, it's all but impossible to create this report just as a report and not as a thing that you have to go manually tweak in Excel or Google Sheets. So sometimes it does take time to set them up, but it's bears repeating that it's a dynamic report. You only have to set it up once. I just feel like a number of these reports, I'm so used to seeing organizations manually creating these reports every time they need to, a couple of times a year, and just investing the time and creating the report once is just saves so much time. Again, it just compounds over the years.
Yeah,
But
and I
I'm
and
kind of impressed. That last one is I'm impressed with Little Green Light more and more because that one last one is particularly difficult to do in
well, and
some CRMs.
that's one of the ones that was one of those moments where I'm like, oh my gosh, you can do this in here. It's amazing. And we won't go deep into reporting, but just what you do is, you've run your search and you have a custom report. And yes, we could do a custom report here in a second. This one, what I've done is I've added these different fields, and what's great is I can actually add the gift. I can add the goal field, and then I can add the gift field as many times as I want. So what I did is I added a gift field for 2025 payments, and I said I want the pledge amount and pledge balance, and I only want it for last year. And then I added the same field again, 2026, with everything is the exact same except the date range is this year for 2026, and then 27 is the next year. So I can add the
Each
same.
column's its own report,
Yeah,
basically.
exactly. And then you can say, I want from this event, I want from this grant. It's a really a superpower in there. And we can go over that here in a second if people are interested in learning a little bit more about that. I think that's yes, I will pull up the report here in a second. I just want to wrap up kind of our main piece here. Was there anything else that we didn't get to, John, in terms
No, I
of
do see someone else had a question that I'm not sure of. Jessica Hoffman asked if you have multiple contacts on a foundation and email one of them, does the BCC to the LGL Dropbox work to link to the foundation, or does it have to be emailed to an email on the foundation record? So I'm not quite sure how the BCC feature works in
Yeah, so
LGL.
the BCC feature is great. You can, and I'll just show you here on. I think I've got it set up on my demo account. If you don't use this, if you go to subscription settings, it's on your general settings, and you can enable the Dropbox, and you can enable it for by level, right? You can enable it for everybody or just administrators. And then when you go to your profile, you will get your Dropbox email. And so what I've done, what you can do is you take this and you just add it to your contacts as LGL BCC or something. And then every time you BCC this email address, it will create a contact report in Little Green Light as an email, and it will attach it to whatever email address you've sent it to. So Jessica, in answer to your question, if the email address you sent it to is associated with the foundation, it will attach it to that record. But if it's not, it'll attach it to the person, and it'll create a new record. I'm 99% sure it'll create a new record if that email is not in there. But if you send it to two people, it will attach that contact report to both of those records. So it doesn't show up for about 30 minutes. It takes about 30 minutes when you do that. So you kind of have to remember to go back and check to see if it got attached correctly. But that is a really nice feature for keeping track of all your communication and your proposals and things like that. And it will upload the attachments as well. So if you send your proposal to the grant maker or your report, you could just copy Little Green Light and it will add the email and the attachment report right to the record without you having to come in and upload it. That is it's a really nice feature. So looks like Liberty is saying it will create a new record if the email is not in there, but if you include all those emails on the foundation record, it will BCC there. And yeah, and you can add multiple emails to a foundation to a constituent. I want to look at the report again. Looks like we had some questions about that. And anybody else, if you have questions, you can just drop them in the chat. But let me show y'all how we do the report. Okay, so the thing with reporting is you want to you want always want to start knowing if you're looking for constituents or gifts or something else. And so, depending on how you start the search, some of your options will be a little different. Let's go to goals and let's create a goals search. And so, what I've got, let's say I just want all my goals. Okay, I'm going to look for every goal. I've got 7 goals in my system, and I want to export the results. So this is, of course, how we start it. Um, Once you're in reporting, you have search, customize, preview. Search, we can change our parameters. We just did. Customize is this is where the magic happens. So we can add goal fields, constituent category fields, contact info fields. Um, let's start with constituent fields and let's add employer organization because that's going to be important for our grant maker. Now we'll go back to goal fields and we'll add the goal name and the ask amount. And I can use my quick preview here and see, okay, I've got, this is looking good. This is looking like what I want. Um, Now, what I can do is under the goals, I can add, I can add the last contact. I can add goal notes. I've got all these different things that depending on how I've put the information into the system, I can pull out. And I can then go down. I can't pull the gifts like I did. I had to pull the gifts in a different type of report. Um, but I can look for tasks. And when I add my tasks, I can customize. This is where I can say, okay, I only want the meetings. I only want to know, or I want the meetings and proposals, and I only want the ones that are due. Maybe I want them next month, and so if I can figure okay, I'm settling it for next fiscal because I can't find next month. What's nice about this is that'll always update. So that, if you use that last or next, it's relative. So if we did this for next month, when we run it in March, it's going to give us April's results. And I can say, is the task completed? No, I just want to know the open tasks. And I only want to know the open tasks for me or for another person. So once I do all that, I may not have any tasks depending on how this. Yeah, I don't think I have any tasks for next fiscal year. So actually, let me change that to. We'll just change that to all dates. And so now I've got those tasks on here. So that's yeah, and that's we can do the grants here in a second. I see some other questions in there. Do you know what John? Do you see any questions we need to answer there?
Yes, there's one from Lisa. We have a family foundation that gives annually with no application process. Can I create a profile for them and add their grant award info each year? So
Yeah,
I would say yes, you could just sort of treat. I would still encourage you to add in any documentation you do have there, but you can treat it just the way you would a funder that has an application process. You're just not going to have the same due dates or tasks, but
yeah.
absolutely.
And we can go here. Let's just add a. I can add a. I think I can. Sorry, I have to add it as a goal. I'm gonna scroll down. Here we go. I can add a goal right on their record, and we can say, 2026. Uh, no official process, or we can note that however we want, and then we can assign it. We can do all of that in there. I need to have an amount. We're going to ask them for $10,000. So yeah, we can track that all the same in there. Yeah, we can use this however we want in terms of whether a goal is something where we're asking for a specific grant or we've got a more general goal of we want to get this family foundation to give us $25,000, almost more of a major gift, right? Some of those family foundations, it's a little less of a competitive process and more of a relationship building. So yeah, you can
But
absolutely use it for that.
But yeah, if I could add, and Liberty added, I have an appeal code called unsolicited grant to record gifts like that. And I would encourage you to do so. Sometimes what I see is if you have, Mike Slayton's a big donor to organization, but there's also the Slayton Family Foundation. I will sometimes see that development sort of just treats that as a gift from Mike, which is all well and good. You need to acknowledge that is where it comes from a relationship perspective. But finance needs to know this is not a donation. This is a foundation. Family foundation is a distinctly different entity, and generally those awards are going to be above kind of the threshold amount for what can get pulled in an audit. So it's really good to make sure that you're um, kind of tracking that at the beginning rather than at the end of the year when you're reconciling, and finance doesn't know that's actually a foundation award versus this an individual award. So I would say not only can you do this, but I would encourage you to do so.
Absolutely. And one of the things we didn't get into appeals and events and campaigns and funds, all of those can be used with the goals. Everything we've done here, we can assign, we can have an appeal that is our grant appeal for the year. We can assign them to whatever fund we want. As the gifts come in, we just enter them as gifts or other income, however you want to in a category. So you can track them just the same way as everything else. Um, is there a way to create a dashboard so you can easily see goals, pledges, pending applications? Yes and no. Um, with the dashboard here, you have two. Okay, why are we now? Of course, my computer's slowing down here. So there are, okay, here we go. So on my dashboard, this is a little bit of a workaround that I did. I created a couple of lists and used this favorite list widget. So I said awarded grants, I've got two, and active grants, I've got three. That's not something that Little Green Light automatically does. That's something that I've created these lists. So I can just, open this up and I can see my three grants that are active, my three applications that are active. Um, what I did was I went in and created this and added constituents that are, let's see, I think my search term here probably was, um, well, I think I'm on a circle there, but I searched for active grants and added them to my list and then created the dashboard that way. There's also a natural dashboard that does have your goals. You got your calendar, of course, so you can have your nice dates on there. And then, oh, my goal summary, I need to go to my organization dashboard because I've assigned these to different users. And so my goal summary here will tell me based on the status we've assigned in each goal where we are on everybody. So for 2026, I have one open, two in process, one prospect, one submitted, one awarded. And I can look at that for 2025. So, but a lot of that for the dashboard stuff, that's sometimes where I will create a report. And when you create a report, you can have it run every day and you can create a link, a permalink in there. So you have a URL, you can always just click and get the updated report. So yeah, you can, sometimes you have to do a little bit of workaround to get the reports you need, but you can do some pretty awesome stuff in Little Green Light. And we got just a few more minutes here. So I want to be sure to wrap up here. We've gone over questions. Next week, we're going to be doing on Wednesday, we're going to do Let's Build a Donor Retention Program in Little Green Light. So Elena Fortner Newsom is going to be joining me, and we're going to look at using some of these tools, some different tools to improve donor retention, which of course is such a big issue with any nonprofit. We have, I think it's the attrition rate of donors is always too high. Love to keep in touch with you. If you want to visit John's website, you just follow that QR code. You go to J Gaddis Consulting. John, is there anything coming up? Anything you want to talk about, or anything you're working on that people might be interested in?
Oops, sorry, I thought I was muted right there. Right now, no, I'm kind of looking forward to Mike and I known each other for a little while. We were in a similar cohort program, and I'm really excited to kind of be spending the spring working on some more creative projects and it's a busy time ahead. So, but nothing in particular I need to call out.
Yeah. Well, yeah. Just check out John's website. And I'll send out everybody I'll send out the recording. I'll send out a copy of John's budget template and a link to his website, so everybody will have that who registered. Um, Thank you so much, everybody. Hopefully, we'll see everybody next week. If you have any questions, you can stick around for a few minutes. But yeah, thank you so much for joining us.